Hamilton to Ferrari. Andretti gets rejected. Teams start launching their cars, and Horner's in trouble. Let's talk about that in this episode of Hot Laps. Heyo, Chris here. You're tuned into the Delta. I hope everything is going well. Apologies for not keeping up with the news. If you look behind me here, you can see we are getting ready for a new addition to the family. We're all super excited, as well as, well, the news has just been super crazy. So every time I thought I was ready to put out a video, something else would come across, and I was like, I just do not have the time and resources to just make a brand new video every time something crazy happens. Like, I was expecting the car launches this week, and I was going to do a video per car launch like I did with the McLaren. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at this silly season, uh, Formula One world has been absolutely insane. We have Hamilton going to Ferrari, Andretti got rejected to join Formula One. Haas, Williams, and Stake have both launched their cars as of this date, February 6th. And there is some odd news that hasn't really gone to the mainstream about Christian Horner, and he seems to be in trouble. We'll talk about that briefly when we get to that segment. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. What we're going to talk or start with first is the biggest news is Hamilton going to Ferrari. I've made a video directly related to this, so if you're interested in that, go take a look at that video. But basically, per Sky Sports News, Lewis Hamilton will leave Mercedes and join Ferrari in 2025. There are a lot of things because it came out so suddenly, but now that we've had time to mull over it a bit, it's a little bit more well put together. But basically, Hamilton is now going to be out of Mercedes. Sainz will be out of Ferrari. And with Leclerc just extending his contract, then that means it will be a Leclerc-Hamilton team that is driving for Ferrari. Everyone's super excited except for maybe Mercedes. The biggest concern I have is who is going to be the number one. I feel that Hamilton has proven to himself throughout an illustrious career. So how do you sit there and say, well, you're going to be the number two to Leclerc? And then likewise, Leclerc has been the quote-unquote golden boy for Ferrari since he showed up. So how do you tell Leclerc, well, now you got to take a seat back to Hamilton? And I just hope that that doesn't get in the way of the main goal that Ferrari is trying to achieve, which is a world championship. What that means for Sainz, we are uncertain. Sainz put out a post saying that he plans on racing hard and staying true to the team for this season, and when a decision is made about his future, he will he will let that be known, and I look forward to it. I'm a big Carlos Sainz fan, so wherever he goes, I will follow. Doesn't mean I'm leaving Ferrari, but I will buy a Carlos Sainz hat wherever he ends up shipping off to. That also then puts in some questions for Mercedes. Toto Wolff said he wasn't surprised about the news. He was just surprised about the timing. So it seems like it was a little taken off guard from the decision being made and made public. I think the way that it came across was that Toto Wolff expected at some point for Lewis Hamilton to leave the team. He just probably wasn't expecting it to happen a month prior to the 2024 season to start. It almost sounds like they wanted to get to negotiations with Hamilton, but before that could even happen, Ferrari swooped in and scooped him up. And Hamilton is, I mean, it's Ferrari. It's a storied and historied racing team, and it's one of the things that Ferrari can always have, despite their car being good or bad. It's like, well, we're still Ferrari, and everybody wants to race for us, including the 7-time world champion. And for Mercedes, we're going to have to make a decision, or they're going to have to make a decision on who's going to replace Hamilton in 2025. If Russell's going to be the guy that takes the number one seat, or if they find another number one, because contracts are ending. A lot of contracts are ending this 2024 season. So maybe they find somebody else. I have a hard time believing that. I believe that George Russell will take the number one, and they'll find somebody to be his number two. In other news that pretty mainstream is Andretti Racing Team got rejected by Formula One. That is another one. I made a bunch of videos based on the big news. Not a bunch. I made 2 videos based on the big news, thinking that that was the only big news that was going to come. And then when I got to the Hot Laps episode, I'd gloss over them, and then we would end up just talking about other things. Well, turns out it's silly season, as seems to be the phrase that everyone's using on the Twitter world about Formula One. But yeah, I made a video on Andretti as well, giving my personal thoughts and beliefs on the situation. Reviewing that video, I maybe came across saying that, like, I don't think that Andretti could handle a Formula One schedule, making it sound like it was an Andretti problem. But honestly, it's a lot of people are upset that Andretti got rejected, and I'm not so upset. And the reason is I just believe that the driving, the talent pool in drivers and engineers is already very minimal, because I said that we could talk about like the current drivers market now, and I bet you could come up with 3 drivers that if they lost their seat, it would be 100% justified. I bet you could come up with 3 drivers right now that you would be like, this guy, this guy, and this guy can get kicked out of F1. They're garbage. Now, I'm not going to say any names. That's up to you and your opinion. But that's the problem I see with Andretti. It has nothing to do with their drive. It has nothing to do with how hard they'll work. It has nothing to do with the lack of funds, or because Andretti has been successful in all endeavors that he has taken on up to this point. I just have a problem with the idea that where are we going to find these 2 other drivers to race well for this team that's going to be brand new? They're going to go through, your brand new team struggles and woes. And then on top of that, let's say they would end up poaching somebody like Carlos Sainz and George Russell. Let's just take an example, right? Well, who's going to take their seat? So now you're watering down the rest of the competition, because now Ferrari and Mercedes or McLaren or whoever these good drivers drive for are going to have to find their replacements. So now once being a good team in McLaren is now not as much of a good team because they had to replace one of their good drivers. Why? Because Andretti scooped them up. And then, in my opinion, what will end up happening then is you end up getting a bigger margin between the good teams and the bad teams, because the good teams are going to keep their good drivers, and the bad teams are going to have to shuffle their drivers around even more. And the teams that are like mid-tier fighting those good teams, then they're going to get watered down so much that they won't be able to compete with a good team. So you'd end up with like Red Bull, Ferrari, and McLaren, let's say, for instance, keeping their teams together. They're going to be miles ahead of the rest of the field. And then because of these 2 extra drivers that have to come in, those teams are going to have to water down because they lost a driver, or the new team or Andretti is going to just be so far back that they can't keep up. So while the addition of Andretti would be very, very exciting, and I would believe that Andretti would do everything in their power to be successful, I personally think that it's just not a good idea when the talent pool is already so slim. All right, and now let's continue on with the car launches. Well, McLaren already released their livery. I guess that's not technically a car launch, but to be honest, I'm not seeing much of a difference between what McLaren did a few weeks ago to what teams are doing now. But the schedule had Haas releasing their or launching their car on the 2nd, Sauber on the 5th, as well as Williams on the 5th. I would have to say, when it comes to Haas, I was very uninspired, to say the least. And that seems to be what the notion is. An uninspired team did an uninspired car launch. The car looks beautiful, in my opinion. Black, white, red. Can't really go wrong with the color scheme. But at the time that it came out, I wasn't super excited. It resembled much of what McLaren did with black and orange. Haas just went with black and white. Okay? And if you look at some of the other teams, I am kind of concerned, because while, like, let's say the state car does look really, really cool, they're kind of doing the same thing. They went with green and black. Williams went with blue and black. So are we really getting like a very diverse like livery amongst the teams? I just don't see that happening. I don't really know what I'm looking for, but what I do notice is when I see it, I'm just like, yeah, it looks like a race car. I'm not like inspired or taken back by the launches. But in short, Haas did their launch on the second. Black, white, red. Looks fine. Looks clean. Nothing to really complain about, but nothing really stands out. Compared to their last year's car, I would say maybe the curves of the lettering and stuff like that. It looks a little more sleek and modern and up to date. If we go over to the Williams car launch, same premise: blue, black, two tones. Again, looks sleek. They have maybe a little bit more of their tertiary color of silver in there. Looks cool. Looks cool. I mean, again, I'm not inspired by it. I'm hoping that the team overall does well, but I mean, the way your car looks doesn't dictate how well you'll do throughout the season. So, good job for Williams for getting out a cool looking car. There's again no complaints on my end. I guess the coolest one, and it's just because of the color, it's gonna stand out, is Steak. They put out their car, and it was probably the most exciting because it's the new name, new branding, new colors. And they I think they delivered. Everything was exciting as they were releasing their pictures and Twitter posts and stuff like that. It does look really cool with that neon green. Like I said, it will stand out in the amongst the pack, regardless if it's in the mid pack or the end of the pack. We'll all know that that's the state car for sure, for certain. I think that's maybe why the McLaren one was excited too, because again, white and black for Haas, blue and black for Williams. Those are their colors, but they're not going to stand out. Opposed to like McLaren, one, everyone likes McLaren and seems like everyone loves Lando and Piastri and stuff like that. But I mean, it's orange and black. It pops. It stands out. So, but despite it just being orange and black, McLaren also is orange and it sticks out. It drives along the racetrack and you can be looking down and be like, yep, that's the McLaren. That's that orange one right there. And that's the same feeling I get with Steak. You're going to see that car drive by and you're going to be like, well, that's Kick Sauber. They're in the race. You can see it a mile away. You can see it from the moon with that bright neon green. So that's pretty cool. I think because they were new, they definitely put a lot more effort than, let's say, Haas and Williams into their car launch, just to build some more hype and everything like that. Again, we'll see how all these teams race, because that's really what I care about. I mean, all these cars could be black and or white. Wouldn't matter to me at all. I care about the performance of the car. I mean, if the car looks cool, then that's bonus points. But like I said, as a Ferrari fan, I think their car is always beautiful, but they never win. So what difference does it make? Yeah, most beautiful car in the world, there's no points for that. All right, now moving on to the last topic, a little bit troubling news. It seems like team principal Christian Horner is in a bit of trouble. The way that I'm going to approach this, I'm not an investigative journalist. I am not going to sit here and just dogpile on somebody just because I don't like their team or don't like them as a driver or whatever. I don't know anything about Christian Horner. He might be the nicest guy. He might be the most evil guy. None of my concern, because based on the information I have, I don't find it fair to bring somebody down just because it's low-hanging fruit or easy to do. With that being said, we will report about it. I'm just not going to jump to conclusions until I get some concrete evidence or more official word gets brought down the line. But basically, it looks like Red Bull conducted an investigation on Christian Horner about some unbecoming behavior at work. Again, nothing too specific, but it has been serious enough where it seems that Red Bull may have asked him to step down as team principal. What does that mean? I don't know. That means that there's enough proof and they don't want any of the bad PR coming down the line later. Does that mean Christian Horner does it? I'm not sure. And again, I don't really care. I don't really subscribe to an individual being found guilty until proven innocent. So that's the news, unfortunately, with him. We will keep an eye on the stories and what releases and what doesn't. But until I get some concrete evidence, I'm not even going to formulate opinion. I hope whatever it is just a misunderstanding. I wish for nothing bad to happen to anybody or any individuals. But if it's found that he behaved unbecoming, then he deserves whatever comes his way as well. Anyways, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hot Laps. My name is Chris. There will be links in the description for the Hamilton Ferrari video I made and the Andretti rejection video I made. I really would appreciate your support with a like and subscribe. And until next time, take care. This is the Delta. Bye.